I'm 102, and I pick up every bottle cap I see. My family thinks I've lost my mind. I haven't. I'm looking for my son. I was shelling peas on the porch. Purple hull peas, the kind that stain your fingers and don't come off for days. August in Greenwood sits on your chest like a heavy hand. You don't fight that kind of heat. You just endure it. Tommy Higgins came running up the road, 11 years old, maybe 12. His shirt untucked, shoes gone, eyes too big for his face. I knew before he opened his mouth. A mother knows. Your body figures it out before your mind lets it. I stood up. The peas went everywhere. That bowl rolled down the steps and cracked on the bottom stair. I can still hear that sound, a clean snap, like bone breaking. And I walked, didn't run. I walked to the river, because running would have made it real. Now listen to me. I'm telling you this because something happens when the worst thing in the world finds you, something nobody prepares you for. But you'd need to know who I was before that afternoon to understand what it did to me. I came into this world in 1924. Greenwood, Mississippi, the Delta, about as close to the bottom of everything as you can get without falling off entirely. My daddy, Louis Thibodeau, worked Mr. Patterson's cotton. Sharecropper. That's a polite word for a man who breaks his back on somebody else's land and never gets ahead. My mama, Odessa, sang in the Mount Zion choir. She could make a meal from nothing but flour and fatback and prayer. I watched her do it 1,000 times. We lived in a house with a tin roof and 3 rooms, a porch that leaned a little left, like it was tired of standing up straight. 5 children. I was the middle one, the quiet one. I sat on that leaning porch and watched everything. The way Mama's hands moved when she was angry. The way Daddy's shoulders looked coming in from the field, like he carried the whole sky on them. You learn early that people lie with their mouths. Their hands tell the truth. Mama taught me 2 things that stuck to my bones. First was singing. Not pretty singing, real singing. The kind that rises up from your stomach and shakes the windows and makes God look down. Second thing she taught me was this. She said, "You hold your head up, Mae Ella, but you hold your children closer." That was her whole philosophy, pride and protection. For a black woman in Mississippi back then, those 2 things were the same. I married Robert Crawford in 1943. He was from Itabena, 10 miles down the road. Quietest man I ever met. Built things with his hands, chairs, cabinets, a crib for our first baby. He didn't talk much, but when he touched something he'd made, you could see the tenderness in his fingers. I loved him for that. I loved him for a lot of reasons, but that one I remember most. We had Ruth first, then James, then Elijah, 3 children by 25, and I ran that house like a woman who believed, truly believed, that if she loved hard enough and watched close enough and held tight enough, nothing in this world could touch what was hers. Raising black children in Mississippi in the 1950s was an act of war. I don't mean that as some figure of speech. I mean you fought every single day to keep them alive in a place that didn't want them alive. You knew which stores they could walk into, which roads stayed safe after dark, which roads weren't safe at all. You watched your kids like a hawk watches a field, and you never, not for 1 second, relaxed. Ruth, my oldest, she called me the warden, said it like an insult. I wore it like a badge. I checked on them in the night, knew where they were every hour, walked them to school, and watched until they disappeared inside, then stood there another minute, just in case. People told me I was too much. Robert said I was suffocating them. I said I was keeping them alive. You tell me which one matters more. Then Emmett Till. 1955, 14 years old, murdered not 40 miles from where my children slept. They dragged his body from the Tallahatchie River. His mama opened that casket so the whole world could see what they'd done to her boy. I looked at those photographs in the newspaper. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't breathe for a week. My James was 12, Elijah barely 1, and I thought, this is what they'll do. This is what this place does to a black child the second you look away. So I held tighter, held so tight my knuckles ached, wouldn't let Elijah play more than a block from our house. Robert told me to let the boys be boys. I looked at him and said, boys get killed, Robert. I'm keeping mine. For 6 years I did. I controlled every hour, every outing, every friendship. I was proud of how safe they were, how watched, how held. I didn't understand yet. Holding something that tight doesn't protect it. It just means your hands are already closed when you need them open. Elijah was 7 in the summer of 1961, the baby, the easy one. He came into this world laughing and never really stopped. He collected bottle caps. Lord, that child and his bottle caps. Had a cigar box full of them under his bed. Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, knee-high orange. He'd hold one up to the light and turn it slowly, like it was a jewel, like it was the most interesting thing in the world. He sang to himself when he walked, little songs he invented that didn't have words, just melodies. I asked him once what the song was about. He said, I don't know, Mama. It just came out. He had a gap in his front teeth. When he smiled, you saw it. Made you smile back whether you wanted to or not. That August was brutal. Heat sat on everything like it was punishing us. Robert had been saying for months that I needed to ease up. Let the boys walk to the store alone. Let Elijah run with the other kids without me standing guard at the fence. He said, Mae Ella, you're going to smother that boy. I said, smothered is alive. But I let up, just a little, because Robert was right and I knew it, even though knowing it made me sick. Saturday afternoon. The older boys, James and a couple neighbor kids, were heading to the river. Elijah wanted to go. He stood in the kitchen doorway with his shoes already on and that gap-toothed grin. I almost said no, felt the word in my mouth, come back, right there on my tongue. Didn't say it. I said, you stay with your brother, you hear me? And he said, yes, ma'am, and he was out the door. I went to the porch, sat down with my peas, told myself this was normal. This was what mothers do. They let go a little. They let go a little. I shelled those peas about an hour before Tommy Higgins came up the road. The bowl cracked. Peas spilled into the dirt. I walked. I'm telling you I walked because running would have made it real. And I was not ready for real. My legs carried me, but I was somewhere else, watching myself from above, like a bird, like something that had already left its body. 10-minute walk to the river. Don't remember it. I remember arriving. The older boys stood in a circle on the bank, wet, shaking, wouldn't look at me. James was on his knees. Robert was already there. Somebody must have run to him first. And he stood in that water up to his chest, holding something. I walked into that river in my house dress and my shoes. The mud pulled at me like it wanted me too. And Robert made a sound. I'd never heard anything like it from a man. Wasn't a scream, wasn't a cry. It was the sound a person makes when something gets taken from them that they cannot survive losing. I hear it still. 102 years old, and that sound lives in the next room. I carried my baby boy out of that river. His body was so small, his fingers were curled. Something in me went into that water and never came back out. The days after, I don't remember them in order. I remember the color of the casket, my mama squeezing me so tight I couldn't inhale, the quiet in our house where Elijah's singing used to be. That quiet was the loudest thing I ever heard. Ruth tiptoed around me like I was made of something that would shatter. James wouldn't look at me, 14 years old, and he blamed himself. Part of me, the part I'm not proud of, part of me blamed him too. I stopped talking for 2 weeks. Robert built a bench in the backyard, sat on it every evening, alone, staring at nothing. We lived in the same house. We were 1,000 miles apart. I wanted to die. I'm not saying that for drama. I mean, I wanted to quietly stop existing in a world that would take a 7-year-old from a river on a Saturday afternoon. But I had Ruth, had James, had Robert out there on that bench, and Mama's voice in my head, you hold your children closer, even when the reason you're holding them is because one of them is gone. About 3 months later, Tuesday morning, trash truck had just come and the street smelled like diesel. The neighbor's girl, Cora, fell on the sidewalk, 5 years old, both knees skinned, screaming, nobody around. I was on the porch. Before I thought about it, before my mind had any say in the matter, My body stood up, walked down those steps, picked up that child, cleaned the cut with the hem of my skirt, held her until she stopped crying. Something shifted, not healed, I want to be clear. Nothing healed, but shifted, like a bone that sets crooked and you learn to walk on it a new way. I realized I had a choice. Close my hands into fists and keep them that way forever, or open them. I opened them. I became, without meaning to, without deciding to, the woman every kid on the block ran to when they fell. I sat with Dolores Harper when her son got shot in '65. Sat with Annie Mae Collins when her daughter died of pneumonia. Sat with 4 mothers who buried their children. Held every one. Didn't say it gets better, because it doesn't. I said, I know, that's all. That was enough. We moved to Chicago in 1968. Robert found work at the steel plant, and I became a foster parent. 11 children over 20 years. Not to replace Elijah. You don't replace a child. That's not how love works. But my grief had cracked me open, and what came out was a tenderness I didn't know lived inside me. It had been underneath all that pride, all that control, all those years of holding tight. The softness had been there the whole time. It just needed the breaking to get out. Now listen to me. I'm telling you this because people say grief makes you stronger. That's a lie. It's a lie people tell because they can't sit with somebody else's pain. So they hand you a word like strong and walk away feeling helpful. Grief doesn't make you stronger. Grief makes you softer. It cracks open the hard shell you spent your whole life building. The pride, the control, the belief that if you just hold tight enough, nothing bad can reach you. When grief breaks you, and it will break you, what comes out is either bitterness or kindness. I've seen both. I nearly chose bitterness. It was right there. Would have been easier. I chose kindness. But I need you to understand something. It wasn't courage, wasn't bravery. It was because I knew what broken felt like. And I could not see it in another person's face and do nothing. That's not strength. That's just what happens when you've been to the bottom and you recognize it in someone else's eyes. I still pick up bottle caps. Every time I spot one on the ground, I pick it up. Got a jar of them on my kitchen windowsill. Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, brands I don't even recognize anymore. My granddaughter thinks I'm losing my mind. Maybe I am. But every cap I pick up, I hold it to the light the way he used to. Turn it slow. Remember that little boy's face looking at it like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I still feel the word I didn't say. Come back. 63 years, and it sits on my tongue like I'm still standing in that kitchen. I'll carry it until they put me in the ground. But here's what I know. At 102, you cannot hold the world close enough to keep it safe. You can't. I tried with everything I had, and the world breaks you anyway. So the only question that matters is this: when it breaks you, what comes out? I hope it's kindness. I hope it's your hands open, reaching for the next person who falls. Not because you're brave, because you remember what the ground felt like.